Our first speaker today is Dr. Asaf Shaikh. He's a familiar face to many of you from both university hospitals and the VA. His complete bio is in your program, but he's known for tackling the difficult issues of motor symptoms, gait, balance, and using innovative biomedical engineering concepts. Okay, that sounds pretty intimidating. But Dr. Shaikh is here to bring it to the practical level with new directions in Parkinson's, especially as it relates to vision, perception, and rhythm. He's committed to helping those with Parkinson's with practical ways to improve your day. So, Dr. Shaikh, well, welcome, Dr. Shaikh.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Kathy, and thanks, John, for all your help, and thank you all for coming and attending today's excellent program that Kathy and her team has put together. We are very proud of all that you do, and we are very thankful to all what you do. Can we dim the room light, because I have some videos. It will look better if it is possible. So, you know, when we are in Northeast Ohio and when we are immersed in this environment, we don't know how much what we have. We don't appreciate what we have. When you go out of Cleveland or when you talk to people outside of Cleveland, and that I do a lot in my world, when I talk to foundations like American Parkinson's Disease Association or Parkinson's Disease other organizations, they tell me the type of infrastructure that we have in Cleveland is amazing. We have OPFNE, we have InMotion, we have so many other organizations which are there to serve Parkinson patients, and they're all non-for-profit. So I think you should all know that how fortunate you are, which sometimes we don't appreciate. So, as Kathy said, I work at university hospitals, but I also work at the Cleveland VA. And I'm going to show you a story of a, back then, 46-year-old U.S. Navy veteran. So,
retired as a Navy chief at 38. Shortly after that, I started seeing the symptoms of Parkinson's. I ignored it for a couple of years. I would love to be able to walk without a cane. That would be awesome.
It's Sunday night in Cleveland, Ohio, and we're broadcasting live from OR 23, an operating room at University Hospital's Case Medical Center, where right now a team of doctors is performing brain surgery. And if that isn't remarkable enough, here's another detail. The patient they are operating on is awake. The patient is a 49-year-old Navy veteran named Greg Grinley. He has been diagnosed with early onset Parkinson's disease and as a result suffers from severe tremors. The hope is that as the surgery continues over the next 2 hours, his life will be improved and transformed.
I'm going to turn it on now. Left.
August,
right.
July. Turning it on. Here it goes. And the tremor's gone.
Provide dry goods, canned goods, meat, and just about anything else you think of. This is for the weekend. This
For the backpacks they make. Yeah,
milk, cereal, canned goods. Yeah, I love the fact that people are volunteering now because it's Christmas and Thanksgiving season. Mm-hmm. What happens when Christmas and Thanksgiving are over? Kids are still hungry. People are still hungry.
How long have you been doing this?
3 years. We went from 50 families the first month. We average 350 families a month now. It's not people, it's families. The surgical staff, everyone was beyond nice. I was expecting a lot worse, a lot more trauma, and it wasn't there. It didn't happen. I was in the hospital 24 hours for the brain surgery. I literally went in at 2 o'clock one day, went home at 2 o'clock the next day. I just want to be able to enjoy my life, you know.
So that was the story of Greg, who was suffering for a terrible movement disorder called Parkinson's disease that I don't have to introduce you to. And deep brain stimulation helped him. So Parkinson's disease actually is more than abnormal movements. It disrupts your perception. It disrupts how you perceive and how you act based on perception. It slows your reaction time. It impairs your vision in a way that it affects the way you navigate the space around you. It heightens depression, it heightens anxiety, and all then circles back into your abnormal movement. So, in addition to focusing on abnormal movement, what our research has been is to focus also on perception, how I perceive, how I react to it, and how I act on it. So this is what is going to be today's talk, is perception of vision, rhythm in Parkinson's disease. So as you can imagine, we always think action as doing something, right? Which is a movement, a motor domain, right? And we always think of perception as more along the line of more higher order, more higher level perceiving something, which is not like you can obviously see, you can perceive, right? But if you think about it, action and perception, they are all connected with each other. So, you know, Kathy told you that you guys have a little a page on your table where you are going to mark that how is this guy, Asif Sheikh from UH, how well he is. You perceive me, right? And then, based on your perception, she's going to act in future whether she's going to call me or not again, right? So perception, if you're happy, then I'll be called again. But if you are upset, I'm not going to be called again. So perception and action in day-to-day life is always connected. In anything that you do, there has to be coupling between perception and action. And that coupling, that connection between action and perception, your basal ganglia is at the heart of it. And that's where your Parkinson is coming into play, that how action, perception interact with each other. And that's what we will be hearing in next few minutes, and then we will graduate on to music. So Parkinson's disease at the heart of is at the heart of perception, action, interaction, and we know that it affects 110 million people worldwide. So you are not alone. There are so many like you, and they all have a lot of issues such as tremors, slowness, stiffness, abnormal gait. But these are all motor-related problems. But they also have decrease in reaction time. It's hard time navigating, especially in a busy environment when it is crowded with so many people. They have hard time navigating in that crowded environment. They have problem in the spatial navigation. Often some people veer on one side or they fall. They have problems in spatial navigation. And all of the above then contribute to the depression and anxiety, which is an inherent feature of Parkinson's. So when you look at the Parkinson patient, you just don't treat tremor. You just don't treat their bradykinesia or hyperkinesia. You treat everything as a package. And that's the key, because everything is interrelated. So imagine yourself driving through the New York City, okay? So I'm going to show you this video as if you're driving. Immerse yourself into this video. You're driving the New York City. Initially in the morning, streets are empty. Everything is going well. But then things start getting crowded, right? So as things start getting crowded, as you're driving, you're perceiving things moving around you, but then there are other objects coming into your visual scene. Something is coming from the right, something is coming from the left, someone is overtaking you, someone is coming from the front, and that adds a lot of cognitive load to the brain, especially that cognitive load. See? So when your brain is faced with a lot of conflicting information that comes in your vision, and when you're trying to perceive the way you are moving, unfortunately, Parkinson patients often fail. What happens? They freeze, they slow down significantly, and unfortunately, sometimes they fall. What we call, it is called visual vestibular conflict. I am moving straight, my brain is saying I am moving straight, but the bus is coming like this, and my visual field is saying that, oh, something is moving this way. Am I moving this way or am I moving straight? Normal people can often put that together and they can perceive their own motion, but when you have any disease, especially affecting disease like basal ganglia, like Parkinson, the conflicting information often create problems, and they are not able to resolve that conflict in a smoother and swifter way, and as a result, they freeze, or as a result, sometimes they fall. I mean, this, of course, is not the only reason those things happen, but this is one of the factors, and that's why a lot of times those who have Parkinson have a hard time navigating through a busy space and so on. So we wanted to we wanted to simulate this scenario in our lab. We wanted to have it in a controlled way, that how much of conflict we can create between different systems in our body, and how we can stimulate the brain with, for example, deep brain stimulation, and whether we can find a part of the brain when we stimulate, we can help patients resolve that conflict. So that was the first little study that we did, that how our brain can solve visual vestibular conflict, and how Parkinson affects it, and how we can treat that problem. So what we had in our lab, we did two studies. One study that we will talk today about perception of one's own movements. I'm walking on the stage and I'm perceiving things around me. And the second, we looked at perception of one's surround. I'm just standing or I'm walking, and how things are moving around me. Because these are both equally important for you to perceive how you are navigating in the space. So, and ultimately, the goal was to improve help with the vision, with the navigation, with the fall prevention, and proper locomotion and the gait. And that then led to a theme of neuromodulation to shape the research in the 21st century in Parkinson. So, chapter 1, perception of one's own movement. So, in our lab, we have a very interesting piece of equipment. It's called Moog. What is Moog? It's a hexapod. It has 6 legs. It's not a simple something with 6 legs, but it's a flight simulator. So typically, that equipment that you can see here on with my picture there and little cartoon there, that equipment is generally used by NASA. What NASA does with it? They actually do the flight simulation, they do the space simulation, you can even program landing in New York City or landing on Cleveland Airport. You can do landing on moon. You can simulate it, all kind of different motions, different landing, different flight simulations. We don't do that. What we do, we put Parkinson patients on that flight simulator, and we simulate that with some real world scenario. And as Parkinson patients experience that immersively with virtual reality, which way they are moving, we can separate how much they are moving, how much things around them are moving, and how well they can separate the two. And then we come up with the stimulation parameters to address the conflict with the deep brain stimulator. And the idea here is to measure precision of perceived motion of oneself, how well Parkinson patients can perceive their own movements, and can deep brain stimulation modulate this function, and how does it do that? So that's the idea. So this is the first simulated scenario of a star cloud, right? So over here in the video you can see the star clouds are moving around them, and it's pretty straightforward, simple motion. Most star clouds are moving just straight ahead, right? And it is quite comparable to the scenario in driving in New York City with no much traffic around you, right? And this is viewed as an immersive way by a Parkinson patient, as you can see by a little arrow over there here, right? So this is what they see. They just see that they are going in clouds, right? Now, the second scenario that we have is there is a star cloud which is moving more in an irregular way, right? There are some stars going to the right, some to the left, and some going with them. And that's what they view from their virtual reality, and it is simulated by, it is simulating the busy street in the New York, right? And as they do that, we ask them to report whether they are moving to the right or they are moving to the left, how they perceive. So that's called a task called two alternative force choice task, right? So if they go straight, there is a chances that they press right or left equally, right? Because it is straight. But if they go right, extreme right, they always press right. If they go extreme left, they always press left, right? So then it gives a nice little curve like that, and I'm showing you for the healthy people. So what you see here, it is rightward movement, this is leftward movements when they are supposed to report rightward here. So probability of rightward is always 100% when they are extreme to the right, correct? And it is 0 when they are extreme to the left. And when they are straight ahead here by the line, they are 50-50. So this curve then allows us to analyze how well a given person is perceiving. If it is steep like this, that is good. If it is steeper, it's even better. If it is flatter, it is bad. And let's see what happens to Parkinson. Unfortunately, in Parkinson patient, when DBS is off, it is a much flatter line, right? So what that means is they're not able to perceive their own movement in very precise way, okay? And that happens with the blue and red, like when there are visual stimuli is in conflict with each other. Now look at what happens when we turn on the DBS. So they get better, they get much closer to the normal people, especially when they are in the less conflict. And even when they're in more conflict, it gets better. So this conflict between who is moving around me and how am I moving, it is really a problem in Parkinson, and that gets better when you stimulate them with the deep brain stimulators. So the next question we asked, so we did this study on a bunch of people, and what we found that some really got better and some did not. So the next question that we ask is why, right? So of course, location, 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 right? So where you stimulate, and if it is a favorable location, they're going to get better. And if it is not favorable location, they're not going to get better. So what we did is we took their brain MRI and we overlaid that with simulated current that was given to their brain. So what you're seeing here is the green structured little almond here. It's their subthalamic nucleus. That's the part of the brain which is hyperactive when you have Parkinson's disease. And little cherry-colored, red-colored ball that you see here, that's an electrical field which is generated by the deep brain stimulating electrode, right? That electrode, when it is more on the upper part of the nucleus, as you can see here, those people get better. And when it is not there, elsewhere, they don't get better. So we find the areas of this brain, when you stimulate that area, they get better, right? And this work had been done over last several years, and it was done by my postdoctoral fellow who graduated now. So this is what we learned, that there are certain parts of the brain that when you stimulate, your perception gets better, right? So that was about perception of yourself, right? The other very important thing is perception of your surround, okay? So now you drove to the New York City, you drove to Times Square, and when you are a normal, healthy person, Times Square looks like this, okay? But if Times Square's that depth of the structures and how far is that tower, all that, is perceived by your brain because your right eye and left eye gets slightly different information from the structure which is far. And your brain puts two together, okay? And it gives a perception of a form. So then this microphone looks a little spherical to me instead of a little circle, right? I can see that door is far away and the computer is closer to me. That perception of depth requires slightly different information that goes to your right eye and to the left eye. And unfortunately, in about 1/3 of Parkinson patients, they have problem in the way they view it. And 2/3 of the Parkinson patients do not have normally aligned eyes. Now, if your eye is not normally aligned, what happens is your image on the right and the left eye is not aligned with each other in a proper way. As a result, a lot of people see blurred, a lot of people see double sometimes. They have problem reading, they have problem searching. We often blame it to dry eye, we often blame it to cataract, we often blame it to not right prescription. People fix it, they still don't get better. The problem is here. Problem is in the brain. So what we did next is, can we really find a part of the brain that we stimulate which fixes this eye movement problem? So that was the next study that we did. And we had a state-of-art, very high-resolution camera in our lab. What that camera does, it actually tracks your two eyes, and it tells me at every 1 millisecond where my eye is at the resolution of 0.01 degrees. Very high-resolution camera. That camera, using that camera, what we find is that in Parkinson patients, when their DBS is off, that means when two eyes are apart from each other, they are actually plotted apart. So this is a position in vertical plane. This is position in the horizontal plane. You see the two eyes are so far apart from each other, they should actually overlying each other, right? So when I turn on DBS, and when that person is seeing more clearer, the two eyes are aligned with each other. So again, what we wanted to know is which part of the brain that we turn on that fixes this problem, right? So again, we did the MRI, we did the modeling of the electrical stimulation, and we find a specific part of the brain and a specific white matter pathways around the subthalamic nucleus. When we stimulate that, it actually improves their vision. Then serendipitously, we found something very interesting. Perception of one's surround. Okay, so imagine you are asking me, okay, can you get me a cup of coffee? Okay. Now, I am going to look for a cup of coffee in this room. What am I going to look for? Most likely, I'm going to look near the walls, because probably a cup of coffee will be on the wall, not on the stage, right? Most likely, it is going to be next to something that looks like coffee dispenser, right? So I'm going to look for coffee dispenser, which is going to be a bigger object. So our brain has a strategy, right, to look for things. To look for objects where they are supposed to be based on our prior experience, right? In a busy room, if you ask me on an office desk, for example, find a computer mouse, right? You are going to look for a desk. You are going to look for something that looks like a desktop monitor. You are going to look for something like a keyboard. And then you are going to find that computer mouse next to those objects. So your brain is trained in a way that your brain uses your prior experiences based on your rest of your life before then when you are making any search in your environment, right? So we wanted to know what happens to Parkinson patients. And it gets very interesting. So we asked a question to someone who was a normal person and a person who had a Parkinson's disease. We asked them to look for a slice of bread on this kitchen counter. I mean, there were several dozen scenarios like that in our study that we did, But this is just, I'm showing you one example, that we asked them to look for a slice of bread. As they were looking for a slice of bread, we were measuring how their eyes are moving from one place to the other, where they landed, where they spent how much time, and so on and so forth. So when you look at a normal person, now slice of bread is below the mortal here, right? It's not in the toaster oven. It is supposed to be in the toaster oven, but it's not in the toaster oven. But in normal person, what we find is that this little heat map that you see, that normal person looked at the door, then they looked at right by the toaster oven. They couldn't find really anything. They found it, they tried to look for it in the bowl. Then they found it by the toaster oven, and then they focused their eye, and that's where the maximum heat is. That's where the red color is mostly, right? So then they found the bread, loaf of bread. This was a normal person. Now, I took the same age Parkinson patient and asked them to look for the loaf of bread. Guess what happened? It took forever for them to find that loaf of bread, but their actually eyes were spent lots and lots and lots of time on the toaster oven, right? Now, you're right. Bread is supposed to be on the toaster oven, but it is not there. So what happens in Parkinson is your brain your eyes do what your brain tells them to do, right? So whenever you are given a task to do something, two things happen, right? Your brain, your top-down, your memory of perceiving something tells you that this thing should be like this. Let me give you an example. If you see if you're thinking of your grandkids, okay? Where are the grandkids? Oh, they are in the backyard in swing and slide. So when you see the swing and slide, you associate those with your grandkids, right? Because your grandkids are supposed to be on swing and slide. If grandkids are not on swing and slide, your eye tells you that, oh, grandkids are not on swing and slide. But brain tells you, no, grandkids are on swing and slide. So now there is a conflict again, right? There is a conflict between what your eyes tell you and what your brain tells you. And there has to be a conflict resolution. It turns out that basal ganglia and dopamine, which is an important feature of Parkinson, has an important role in resolving this conflict. Okay? So, if dopaminergic system is normal, then our brain resolves that conflict and tells you that, oh, kids are not there, eyes are right, brain is wrong. But unfortunately, in Parkinson, if there is a mismatch in dopaminergic system, then what happens? That your brain, you believe what your brain tells you, and you ignore what your eyes tells you. What does this thing resemble in day-to-day phenomenology, day-to-day scenario? Visual hallucinations, right? A lot of times, especially when visual environment is poor, like at dark, right? You perceive your dog. You perceive your friend who passed away. You perceive things which are not there, but your brain is occupied with them. And your mind tells you something, your eyes tell you something, and your brain has to make a decision who is right, and often your mind wins. So that conflict of visual perception, what we call visual hallucination, is dopamine sensitive, right? A lot of times you have visual hallucinations, you go to your doctor, they tweak your Cinemat or carbidopa levodopa, and your hallucinations get better. Why? Because that conflict is not resolved, or now it is resolved. So what we ask, can we really find a part of the brain that I tweak and it helps me with conflict resolution using the electricity? So we did these experiments with DBS off. So for example, this is the same patient who had DBS off, right? Now, I turned on this person's DBS, and I asked this person to look for a lid of a coffee jar. So over here, what you see is a coffee jar, which is a steel coffee jar, and its lid is also a steel lid. So I asked a normal person to look for a steel coffee jar, steel lid, and that lid is not supposed to be in the microwave oven because it's a steel lid, right? but it was in the microwave oven. Now, normal person looked around, looked at the coffee jar, did not really find the steel lid, but ultimately found it in the microwave oven and then fixed eyes over there. Now, this is the same person, next slide is the same person who had difficulty, same Parkinson patient who had difficulty in finding that slice of bread with DBS off. When I turned on DBS, could find the steel lid, which was in the microwave oven, right? So that conflict between where the steel lid is supposed to be and where the steel lid is, that conflict resolution happened very well. So again, like life, right? We studied about 20 patients, and out of 20 patients, about 12 or 13 of them improved, and 7 of them did not have any change. So what we went back into their brain. We did the imaging study, and we did the simulations of the electrical current, location of electrical current, and we found that 2 areas of the brain which just happen to pass by subthalamic nucleus, they project to the parts of the brain which is called where area and what area, that's up here. Those pathways, when we stimulate those pathways, it actually improves the conflict. And that's the ongoing work that we are doing in our lab. So what I'm trying to get to with all these 3 different scenarios, the future of deep brain stimulation is not just to fix your movement, it's not just to fix your tremor, it's not just to fix your slowness. It is also to fix your perception, how you perceive things around you, how you perceive your movement, how you perceive people's movement, and so on and so forth. And the key is to find right location. That's what we are doing. Now, switching gears about perception of a pleasant sound, right? You will perceive a pleasant sound in upcoming talk and rest of the day. But I want to kind of tell you what happens in your brain when you perceive that pleasant sound, right? So, of course, I don't have to tell you all these things, but I'm just going to show you some videos that I have to admit, unlike my rest of my PowerPoint, this I got from YouTube, so these are not original, but that's only this slide. Everything else is original, okay? So, this one video.
We are Tremble Clubs. We are creating a community for them to live well with Parkinson's disease. Can I hear your ee-haw? Ee-haw! Oh my
This is another one. This is for the tremor.
Claire, John, Pukesh, Stephanie, Kuhan. This is a reflection of your musical preferences and personality. It was tailor-made for you based on your own tremor data embedded in the song's core.
I love it. I found it really powerful, very moving, as you can tell. It made me think about how strong I am, really. As I was listening to it, my tremor was going because I was excited, I was enjoying it, and it was exactly in rhythm with the music. It was incredible. It was just, yeah, blown away.
That is my soundtrack, and I hope I would stay more calmer than I have been in the past. So I'm looking forward to listen to this music as regular as possible.
I wasn't expecting to be impressed, to be honest. I thought I can also hear the tremor in the background in the intro. It works. It doesn't distort it too much. It looks like it's meant to be there.
It's not often you can hear your Parkinson's.
And this is very interesting video of the person walking without music and rhythm. So this guy is freezing, as you can see here, and has hard time navigating through a very narrow space, as you can see there, right? It's very common day-to-day problem many of you experience in life. Now see what happens when they turn on the music.
Pattern and difficulty with smooth gait cadence. Then also video with the music, and you'll see the difference. Okay. You meant to pick up some tennis balls. Forgot about that.
So it works, right? Convinced? One interesting thing that I noticed when this person walks with music, that his gait changed a bit, right? So instead of walking like this, he kind of like walks in a rhythm. So my thoughts about how music changes certain motor symptoms is it actually is the rhythm. Our brain, when it listens to certain rhythm, it actually changes the way you perform certain rhythmic movements, such as walking, such as reaching to certain things, and so on and so forth. So we did a little interesting experiment. We're actually doing a little interesting experiment. And I was telling Kathy I did not send her my slides until last night, 2 a.m., because I was making my figure, which I'm about to show you. So what we did is we have several patients who have deep brain stimulator implanted in their brain. But what we can also do is we can actually record from the deep brain stimulator. Okay, so they have an electrode in the subthalamic nucleus, and we can measure the activity of their brain as they do different tasks, including listening to music. So what we did in number of patients is that we recorded their brain activity wirelessly. As you can see here, it is with a Bluetooth wirelessly. You can record their activity when there is no sound, when they are sitting in a silent, quiet room. Okay, and then we played different music to them, and while they were listening to music, we recorded their brain activity again. And this was from the area of the brain where deep brain stimulator is implanted. And the reason why that electrode is there, because that structure of the brain is at the heart of the Parkinson's disease, right? Subthalamic nucleus. So we recorded the activity of that subthalamic nucleus to figure out what really happens in there when you listen to different type of music. So we played different components of the music. So one was simple metronome, right? So I'm going to play that metronome here. Simple, right? So we played that for about 10, 20 seconds, 30 seconds, and we keep on repeating it. As they were listening to it, we recorded their brain activity. Then we went to a different type of music, which was more of a melody, right? Again, for about 20 seconds, as they were sitting there listening to this, recorded their brain activity. And then the last one, there was one more, but one was consonance, which is like this. And then there was another thing called dissonance, which I'm not showing you here because it was not that significant, but that is, I was told by my music experts, and correct me if I'm wrong, but melody, consonance, metronome, they all have rhythm to them, right? Everything goes up and down in rhythm as you hear that. While dissonance is more of a chaotic, like a jazz, and it has like more than one rhythm just randomly mixed together, right? So there was another called dissonance, and I should have put it actually, but that actually did not do anything to the brain. But in any case, I will show you soon. So then, as they were doing that, and as we were recording from the brain, we also did a little modeling to figure out where that electrode is sitting in their brain based on their MRI, and we found out that there were some contacts of the electrode which was on the upper part of the nucleus, some electrodes were on the lower part of the nucleus. And what we did is we measured the activity from the top part of the brain structure and the bottom part of the brain structure simultaneously in response to music. And when they were quiet, you can see with this, here I'm just plotting a graph, like I'm not going to go too much into detail, but it's the power of a signal in different bands, right? So this is, like radio, like amplitude frequency modulating band in the radio, like FM radio, right? So you capture certain signal at certain bands of the frequency, right? Like some stations at 100, some station at 108, like that. The same way, in the brain, there are certain frequency bands, and what we look for is, okay, tremor has this frequency band, this thing has that frequency band. So likewise, for music, we actually found something interesting between 4 to 8 hertz frequency band. Okay, that's a theta. That's a brain activity in that frequency band. So watch what happens. This is like arrow, just focus on that when there was no music in a black trace. Now, when we play metronome, you see that blue thing here? There, it has changed. So we see the significant change in the power in this band. It had elevated bit. This is the average of 14 nuclei. So 14 different, so 7 people, 2 sides, 14, right? So that average, which tells you it's a robust change there, it actually went up a little bit in response to metronome. While, and this is from the top part of the brain, and the bottom part of the brain, you see that it is kind of precisely overlying. You can't even tell 2 separate lines. So there was no change in the bottom, there was change in the top, right? Now, I played melody. You see the red? Red is elevated a bit compared to the black. It changed there again. But when you are from the bottom part of the structure, there was no change. And the same with that consonance. Green, again, there was a lift. But there was no change in the bottom part. So the top part of the structure in the brain, subthalamic nucleus, significantly changes in a specific frequency band of 4 to 8 hertz when you play a music which has some rhythm to it. I played dissonance, it did not change. So what my take on this data is any music that comes with a rhythm, it has to do something in the brain. It is changing the brain signal in a Parkinson's disease. So this is what I learned last night at 2 a.m. We are still, like I said, we are still running these studies, but it was so exciting that I had to show this to you, and that's why I showed you. So we want to, next thing what we want to figure out, that we know now that music does change the Parkinsonian brain, but how that change happens, that's the next question. Once, and hopefully we will figure it out in near future. Once we figure out how that happens, then probably we can augment that change with the DBS. You can tune electrically certain parts of the brain in some way that music therapy is more effective for. But that is, again, the future. We first need to figure out why that happens, how that happens. And with that, all that I said is not just my ideas and my work. I don't do anything. I just speak with people. real hard work is done by my lab. And we are very grateful to federal government who had given us funding, and I want you guys to know that despite federal funding, our lab relies a lot on philanthropic support that we get through the university hospital, especially the brave experiments like the studies that I did in visual perception and perception of sound. Before I go to the federal government for pilot data, I rely on the philanthropic funding, and we have philanthropists here who helped us also. So I want to thank all of them, and I want to thank my patients who spend hours and hours and hours and come to my lab and volunteer their time and volunteer their brain and volunteer everything for us. So thank you.
So we've set aside some time for questions. Fred is in the back with the red shirt. If you have a question for Dr. Shaikh.
Thank you, Doctor. Hello, Dr. Shaikh. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was excellent. What I would like to know is, or what my perception is for the treatment of Parkinson's, they never treat the complete person. They only treat the tremors or whatever. It would be nice to have a mentor or somebody to show you these different things and about the music and things that you've brought up. Is there ever going to be a program where we have somewhat of a compass to say, here, these are the things that can also help you? Not just seeing a brochure or something here again, but something that would really be directly to the patient and the caregiver about all the different aspects, treating Parkinson's as a whole package.
Yeah, so, I mean, you are right, but I think there are programs like that. So yeah, somebody comes to the clinic, we focus on their medical problems like tremors, slowness, other things. There are programs, for example, InMotion is doing an excellent job at giving exercise and I think dance is there too, music, yoga. There are lots of, they have a big portfolio, and if you go to American Parkinson's Disease Association website, they have several resources there too. I also want to announce that we are at UH, we are now collaborating with NeoMed, and we are putting Neurodegenerative Research Center between UH and NeoMed, and one of the goals of our center is not just research, but also will be outreach. So we are actively working on developing something, partnering with organizations like yours, hopefully in future to put together more comprehensive programs and offerings. And but currently I know that InMotion does have that. You can certainly count on it, and unless there are a few more around like that. Yeah. Yeah.
You can find them on the ohparkinson.com.
You can, Kathy's saying you can find them on ohparkinson.com website. There are several classes. It's just unfortunately they are not like in the hospital, right? I mean, not unfortunately, actually, fortunately, they're not in the hospital. So you don't find them when you go to doctor's office. But I think when they come to our clinic at UH or VA, we give them the brochure from, at least we have InMotion brochures, and we can get some from you. And you can ask your doctor.
Dr. Shaikh, thank you so much for your presentation. Coming from 50 years of personal practice of deep meditation, yoga, and alternative practices, I've been very inspired by your discussion. For my question, I wanted to ask you if the, when you spoke about the basal ganglia and dopamine and such, how can someone that would not want to have deep brain stimulation or is in beginning stages of Parkinson's, I have a few ideas here, and maybe you could give your thoughts on them. One is when you said that the eyes ignore you ignore what your eyes tell you and you believe what your brain tells you. And this perception is different. The question I have, first part, is how would changing your brain waves through consistent deep practice of meditation relate to that? And I'll just add on, when you spoke about the music and that the beat is very important for the rhythm, what about music that is like non-rhythmic and has no melody to follow, but might be stimulating other brain waves in a deeper relaxation? So it's all related to other ways that the biochemistry and the brain waves are affected over long duration and those kinds of practices. Thank you for your answer.
Thank you for your question. So there are, I think, 3 or 4 independent questions within your question. So I'll go one at a time. So first question was yoga or any other alternative practices that can change the way brain works in Parkinson's, especially in the early phases of the disease. And those who don't need, want, or not ready yet for deep brain stimulator. So we also did another study which was actually funded by the federal government, and we piggybacked upon another experiment to that, thanks to our philanthropist, which we did out of InMotion, where we did exercise, for example. And what we find in about 40 plus patients that we already collected so far, that there is something called adaptive training, adaptive exercise. So you bike, your bike learns how you are biking, and then your bike changes the way your body changes. Your tremor improves, your movement improves, and that's constant feedback. And Fred knows that very well, that bike, adaptive bike, right? That's his baby. And so that adaptive bike, what we did is as patients were utilizing the adaptive bike, we recorded their brain activity. And what we found is that you bike today, we record your brain activity before you bike and after you bike, and we do that every other day for a whole month. And what we find is that brain did not significantly change immediately, but brain actually, we found a change in the signal that we could record from the brain over a period of 1 month. Like gradually it changed. Of course, it's not a huge 50% change. I mean, if I show that data, nobody's going to believe me. That is unrealistic. But we did see like 10% slight change in the way we record from the brain, or even over a period of a month. So persistent, consistent exercise does improve or change the way your brain functions. Similarly, music, right? I just showed you. Now, in my collection of these few patients that I did so far, we only had one non-rhythmic, which was dissonant, right? Rest of them were more rhythmic and had some beat or rhythm to it. We have not done the other, but we would love to explore that area more. This is fairly new territory in my lab, not even started, in embryonic phase right now. But we will be happy to look into like alpha beats, for example, right? Like you get all these different relaxation sounds, how they affect the brain. So it's a very interesting area. Someone told me, one undergrad student just told me like he wants to study nostalgia, like how nostalgia changes the brain. So this is another thing one could look, how nostalgia changes the brain waves. So there are a lot of things. What was the other question? Sorry,
And you ignore what your eyes tell you, but you believe what your brain tells you. And I was wondering if these kinds of methods changing your biochemistry in a long-term, kind of like more not functional medicine way, even with the meditation techniques, if that would how you could describe that as the connection to the ganglia, basal ganglia, and the dopamine. Does it do the same thing but just longer time period, or?
It is possible. Like, we have not studied meditation with the electrical activity yet, but that would be something that one could study, of course. I mean, meditation does a lot of good things to you, right? So it not just treats your basal ganglia, it also treats the anxiety, it also treats the mind, and that has direct implication to your disease.
I had a question, doctor. This is my 20th year since my initial diagnosis, and I immediately signed up for piano lessons. I've been playing that now for the last 20 years. I play mahjong. I exercise. Would all of these components possibly have helped? I feel that in 20 years into the disease, I'm doing pretty darn good. And I wonder, could they have slowed the progression of the disease because I'm always doing something?
I'm in agreement 1,000%. I think the reason why you are standing there, talking in a very clear and precise way and a clear way in front of me today, 20 years in your disease, is because all of the above.
Okay, thank you.
I think we have time for 2 more questions, and Dr. Shaikh is going to be at the UH table as well, if there are additional.
I have to leave after his talk.
Oh, okay. At least through lunch.
Yeah, that's right.
Dr. Shaikh, thank you for a wonderful presentation, really enlightening. 2 things. One is, it feels a little bold to tell a researcher about another research that I know about, but I recently learned of and spoke with a neurologist on the East Coast who is doing research into Parkinson's and meditation. So I wanted to say that there is somebody, I don't know if they're doing it I know they're doing it with functional MRI. I don't know anything about deep brain stimulation patients, so I just wanted to say that is happening. So it feels bold to bring it up to you, but there it is.
No, not at all, not at all. I mean, we know, so I will tell you, alternative medicine, whole body, a whole brain, whole body approach is a contemporary way our federal government thinks these way. Well, so I will tell you, NIH, like few years back, NIH invited me to sit on their panel, which was just focused on alternative medicine, yoga, meditation, alternative treatments like Ayurvedas, homeopaths. You know, there are a lot of, it's major thrust area that decision makers and funders are currently interested in federal government. So no, probably not just one. There are multiple of those people who are doing it, and it's just exciting area for me.
Thank you. That's great. I'm glad to know that. And my actual question is, are you familiar with the it's more in psychology, I think, the concept of highly sensitive people, and the data the way I've heard it described is when the average person takes in let's say 2 pints of information with their senses. Highly sensitive people are taking in 100. Mm-hmm. And I got so interested by your New York City study and what it's like for somebody like me as a highly sensitive person who is taking in so much information at any point in time, and whether you've factored that at all into your data and your research.
So, first of all, thank you. You gave me an idea to do a sub-analysis. So I have not done that sub-analysis, but I wonder, we do see a little divergence in the way people behave, in their perception, and often we just blame it to the way their vestibular system works, right? but there could be, like you said, a separate component to it. Perhaps we can develop a battery which can classify, and we can see whether there is a correlation in their baseline personality, how information is processed in the brain, and we can find a correlation. So that's a very interesting point. Thank you.
One more question? Brad? No? Oh, yes, right here.
Thank you. As someone who is very resistant to wanting to put more pills in their body, how do you feel about that? Because I've just been given a prescription to start medication for the tremors and that, and I am really struggling to decide whether or not I'm ready to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say that when we measure these responses in response to deep brain stimulator or medication, things like that, of course, medications have a robust change in the brain activity. Exercise, music, they all help you go in the right direction, but they don't necessarily make that leap. The second interesting thing that we see is often when you are on certain pharmacotherapy already, your brain sometimes is more primed to be responsive to perform better in response to these alternative treatment approaches such as music or exercise. And the third is, let's take exercise, right? So if there's a lot of stiffness, there's a lot of tremor, you are not able to participate fully into the exercise, and the effect of exercise is not going to be that effective. So I would always advise my patients that you take your conventional pharmacotherapy or deep brain stimulation or whatever your doctor recommends is best for you, and then add that along with the exercise or music or yoga, meditation, anything that else, everything else.
Okay,
so it's more of a team approach than a solo approach.
Well, yeah, I've always been extremely active outdoors, and so it's been a struggle to feel that you can't do what you always did.
Yeah, I mean, there is a study, for example, our center, you will find it on our UH research booth, there's something called SPARKS, which is like we are recruiting very early Parkinson patients who are not on any pharmacotherapy. All they do is exercise. And we are seeing whether that intervention is helpful to delay the start of the pills and so on and so forth. So those type of studies people are already doing, including us. And we'll find out how well that works. But I am optimistic that it will work. But when someone is already on medication, someone is advanced enough, I always recommend that don't stop your pills.
Well, I haven't started them yet because, like I said, I'm really struggling to add one more pill to my system because I've never been that kind of person. So,
okay.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shaikh. That was very fascinating information.